Hey, good people. I'm going to be doing a presentation today on defense mechanisms. So, my goal for this actual training is to get you to understand these 10 popular defense mechanisms in a better way that you're able to apply it to the exam and succeed when it comes to that area. Now, remember, there are tons of defense mechanisms out there. However, you don't need to know them all. If you know these 10 and you really put them to work and you're able to comprehend how to actually utilize them on the exam or how to utilize them in everyday life, when you take the exam, it doesn't matter if you see some you've never heard before. You'll know these 10. So you'll either know through process of elimination that this is the one, this is correct, or you'll know it's definitely not that because you'll have an understanding of these. So let me jump back in and just tell you a little bit about defense mechanisms and help you understand why they come to be or why we use them. So, defense mechanisms are basically psychological strategies that we use, people, individuals, clients, whomever, to protect ourselves from anxiety or uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. So, if you're dealing with something that is anxiety provoking and you don't like the feeling that you have or want to kind of work through it, a lot of times we use defense mechanisms. Now, these mechanisms can be healthy and adaptive, but when we overuse them, they may become problematic. And that's where it becomes difficult, it shows difficulty in our relationships and our overall functioning as a whole. So I'm going to go through some of the commonly used defense mechanisms. Hopefully this is easy. You're able to get it, like I said, and apply it to the exam. Let's start with the first one, which is denial. Denial basically is refusing to accept reality or facts. So you're blocking external events from awareness. So the example that I gave here is that a person with a substance use disorder may deny the severity of their problem. So I'm sure we've all worked with people, we've all worked with clients, and they seem to be in denial. We know that something's not right, and we know that they are not giving us the full information, but they might be in denial of what the actual situation is at hand. So think about it. You ask a child something about their grades, and maybe they're not succeeding in a class, but they're in denial, and they're telling you, "Oh, no, my grades are great, or I've done well on that exam." These are examples of denial. Denial, I believe, is one of the easier defense mechanisms, and probably easier to figure out when you're taking a quiz or an exam. And at the end of this, I will have a part two where I give you a quiz and we go over the answers. But this is probably one of the easy ones. So just remember the now. Number two, repression. This is unconsciously blocking out painful or distressing thoughts and feelings from your awareness. So, say a person has experienced trauma, but they don't remember the event. A lot of times, children or adults, things have happened to us in our childhood where we just kind of repress that. We don't really remember it. There are some people who sometimes have memories of their childhood, but they repress those memories because they were so hurtful and harmful that they don't want to revisit it. So they've learned to kind of push it down so it doesn't come to the subconscious and they're able to kind of be aware of what's happening. So that is repression. So when I think of repression, think of it like pressing down. You're repressing, you're pressing it down so you don't have to have it come to surface. Projection, one of my favorite, attributing one's own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or impulses onto someone else. So, a lot of times we do that as humans. We project how we're feeling internally to other people externally. So, I like to use the example of a projector. Think about having a projector in front of you, and whatever you show on that projector, it normally projects out for others to see. So I know you've been in a classroom setting or you've been in college class and the teacher uses the projector and then whatever they put here it shows out there. The same thing in life. Think of projector when I'm using projection because it's how we feel. It's the unacceptable thoughts and feelings that we have that we project to another person. So maybe we don't like a certain um store, and we go visit the store, or maybe someone's always telling us how great the store is and we go there, we really don't like it, but we kind of put it on the other person we're with, like, oh, I know you don't like this store, every time we come in here you're upset or you're frowning or you look like you don't want to be here. That's our internal stuff that we're actually doing and dealing with, but we're putting it onto someone else. So that is projection. Number four, displacement. Displacement. This is when we redirect our emotions and impulses from a threatening target to something safer. So think about this one. You're at work, your boss is pissing you off and you want to let them have it. But you already know that your boss, you can't tell them how you feel, say what you want to say, and get away with it without getting written up or losing your job. So in return, you go home and you take it out on your child or you take it out on your pet, someone that is less threatening. So that is pretty much what displacement means. It's basically placing your feelings and thoughts that are not welcoming or not good, and you're putting it on something that's not going to be as hurtful or detrimental and not going to have as much consequences. So if you go home and you're yelling at your dog or you spazzing out and say, move, get out, move, your dog can't react the way your boss can. There's going to be consequences there. So that is displacement. Number 5, rationalization. Let me scroll down a little bit so you guys can see that. Rationalization is basically justifying your behaviors or feelings with logical reasons. So I like to look at this as one of the intellectual defense mechanisms. This is where we actually are trying to rationalize, I'm using the word in there, how we're feeling or what we're doing to avoid the true reasons for it. So the example here, you blame the difficulty of a test rather than your lack of preparation. I'm sure we've done that. Oh my God, that teacher gave that test. That test was super hard. I think they were just trying to get us. You know, she wants to see us fail. She doesn't really care. She doesn't provide help. She's over the top. Whatever it is, we're putting it out there on them. But in actuality, we could have prepared for it. We didn't put our best foot forward. We didn't study. We didn't take the notes. We didn't show up to class on a regular basis. So in our minds, because we know we didn't do what we're supposed to do, we try to rationalize why the outcome happened the way it did. So, rationalization, definitely one you're likely to see on the exam. Reaction formation. So, this is one of my favorites. And the way I explain it to my supervisees is that we're forming a reaction. Think about it like that. So, reaction formation is acting in a way that is opposite of one's desires and thoughts. So, you have a person who feels guilty about their sexual impulses. Maybe it's a young man or a young woman and they're watching pornography all the time. They just can't get enough of porn. And they're watching the porn, doing all this stuff. And then they know it's wrong and they don't feel comfortable. So they try to form their reaction to be more acceptable to those around them. So they preach about abstinence and how watching porn is wrong and you should sustain from sex and you should do, they're preaching the opposite narrative of what they're really doing. So they're forming a reaction that's normally opposite of what they're really doing or dealing with. A lot of people get reaction formation and sublimation confused. So I'm going to break down these two a little bit more just to help you get an idea and hopefully to be a little helpful. So going back, let me talk about sublimation, then I'll kind of compare the two. Sublimation is channeling unacceptable impulses into socially acceptable activities. In this example, a person has aggression tendencies, but instead of being aggressive and angry and mad, they take up a sport like boxing or they do football. So sublimation, I like to look at the root word of sub and say they're substituting an unacceptable impulse for something that is socially acceptable. So going to boxing, playing football is socially acceptable. So sublimation, think about substituting the activity or substituting that behavior with something that is more socially acceptable. Reaction formation is basically forming a different reaction to that urge or that unacceptable desire or thought. So one of it is more so like the reaction formation is how we're thinking. So think about reaction. We're forming our reaction to be a certain way. It's our thought process. And sublimation is mainly the behavior or the activity behind it. So let me know in the comment section if it's confusing and you don't get it. A sister will break it down for you. So please, please, please comment. Let me know if that helped. Let me know if it didn't. And I'll find ways to kind of explain it in a better way if this is not helping. All right, let's get down to these last three. Regression. Regression is reverting behaviors typically done at like maybe an earlier age in life when you're dealing with stress. You're kind of going backwards. So let me go back over that again. So basically with regression, you're reverting to old behaviors. So like say, for instance, the one I'll use is a child. A parent just had a newborn child, but they have a 3-year-old. 3-year-old's fully potty trained, doing exceptionally well, don't have any accidents, any issues, is in preschool doing just great, phenomenal. They've been potty trained for a full year. Parents bring home the newborn, the 3-year-old decides to regress. They start going back to earlier stages of development. They see the baby wear Pampers, so they decide to start wetting themselves and thinking maybe they can have a pamper or wear a pamper. So again, it's taking those behaviors and going back to earlier stage of life. Another example that might be helpful to you guys, think about teenage life. Teenagers get upset. They might storm out the house, slam the door in their feelings, and they might need a minute to cool down. That is behavior that is pretty much childlike or adolescent like. But sometimes as adults, we regress and we go back to that same type of behavior. So a woman gets mad at her husband, and instead of talking it over or taking a cool down, or she storms out the house and slams the door and starts going back to her teenage years of how she behaved. So these are examples of regression. And these are not really mature ways of handling things when it comes to defense mechanisms. When you think of like mature defense mechanisms, you're thinking of like rationalization, identification, and textualization. These are the ones that you're going to consider. Regression, that's one that you're kind of like more childlike or not as adaptive, as we would say. All right, so identification, unconsciously adopting the characteristics or behaviors of another person or group. So in this example, it says you have a person who adopts the behaviors of a mentor. So you have a mentor or coach, somebody that you look up to, and you kind of adopt their behaviors, the way they act, the way they do things. And that is pretty much what you do to kind of to be like them, so to speak. An easier one might be, let's see, children. So you have a daughter or niece or someone, a little girl, and she loves Disney princesses, and she wants to dress like the princess. She wants to talk like the princess. Her mannerisms are like the princess. Everything is like the princess, and that is who she's identifying. That is identification. She's identifying with that Disney princess, and she's trying to take those behaviors and those characteristics like that person. People do it all the time. You might notice that you have certain hand movements, certain ways that you want to wear your hair, certain clothes you wear. You're basically identifying with someone else, and you like their characteristics and behaviors, and you find yourself following that. That is identification. Last but not least for these defense mechanisms is intellectualization. So this is using excessive reasoning or logic to avoid experiencing any disturbing emotions. So someone, for instance, is diagnosed with cancer or another terminal illness. And instead of accepting that diagnosis and trying to see what they can do to just follow the doctor's rules and tell their family and just sit in those emotions of how life is changing, life is never going to be the same for them. Even if they go through remission, whatever it is, they want to know that life is different based on this terminal illness they've been diagnosed with. When someone intellectualizes, they, instead of accepting it and realizing, hey, this is the diagnosis I have, learning about it, they're going to refuse to process those emotions, and they're going to focus on learning everything possible about the diagnosis. They're going to go to WebMD. They're going to be researching journals. They're going to be doing everything to gain more knowledge and more intellect on the situation versus sitting in those feelings and emotions and letting it come to be. So again, I don't want to confuse you with intellectualization, because you want to do those things. Of course, someone will want to research and want to figure things out, but it's a certain degree of it. This one says excessive reasoning or logic. So you're avoiding the disturbing emotions. So if you get the news, sometimes people are in shock and they automatically go into, I'm going to research, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. They don't take time to say, oh my goodness, this is what I've been diagnosed with. I need to learn more, like the prognosis and how I'm going to deal with it, but they're sitting in it. So they might cry, they might smile, they might just, be all types of emotions might show, but they're in that point. When someone's intellectualizing, they don't do that. They don't let those emotions come in. They avoid them at all costs, and they go straight into reasoning and straight logic. All right. So I hope this helped you guys. I'm going to do a part 2 of this video. So if you want to pause, kind of rewind, go back, check this out, see what it is, see if it's anyone that confused you or maybe I wasn't clear on that you want some more information on, let me know. I'm going to move on. The second part of the video is going to be a quiz. So I'm going to show my screen. All the questions are going to be there. I want you to take it in your house. So yes, get a timer. It is 15 questions. This this actual channel is about helping you prepare for the exam. So it's 15 questions. So I would set your clock for maybe 15, 20 minutes and go through all the questions. Pause it and go through the questions at your time, giving yourself a minute for each question, and then move on. The answers will show at the bottom, at the very end of this video. So you don't want to move ahead. So that's why I suggest pausing, because you don't want to get upset. Be like, she gave me those answers in less than 2 minutes. I didn't finish the test yet. That is why you pause. All right, so we're going to move on to the second part. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe. It's a vibe over here, guys, and I want you guys to catch it so you can pass that LCSW exam.